The morning sun rose over PearlHarbor.com, golden and deceiving. Within moments, the sky erupted with fire and steel as Japan struck without warning. Battleships burned, heroes rose, and a sleeping giant began to stir. This is the day the world changed forever. The attack on Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, the air raid that changed the world. December 7th, 1941, a quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii. The rising sun painted the Pacific gold as sailors at Pearl Harbor went about their routines. Church bells rang, flags fluttered lazily in the breeze. No one knew that in less than 2 hours, peace would shatter and the world would never be the same again. At 6 a.m., 230 miles north of Oahu, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers cut through the waves in formation. From their decks waited 353 aircraft bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters ready to strike. The Japanese task force, commanded by Admiral Kih, was executing a daring plan conceived by Admiral Isoroku, the mastermind of the Imperial Japanese Navy there. Mission: cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet before it could threaten Japan's expansion across Asia. At 7:49 a.m., the first wave appeared over the island. Commander Mitsuo Fukita leading the assault, radioed the now infamous signal Tora, meaning complete surprise had been achieved. The attack on Pearl Harbor had begun. The first bomb struck Wheeler Field and Hickam Field, destroying rows of parked aircraft before they could take off. Then came the assault on Battleship Row, where the U.S. Navy's pride lay anchored in the harbor. The Arizona, Oklahoma, West Virginia, California, and others. Within minutes, the calm waters turned into chaos. Torpedo bombers skimmed just above the surface, releasing their deadly payloads with surgical precision. At 8:06 a.m., a 1,760-pound armor-piercing bomb hit the USS Arizona, penetrating its deck and detonating in the forward magazine. The explosion ripped the battleship apart, killing more than 1,100 men instantly. Flames shot 600 feet into the air as oil burned across the water. The Arizona sank in minutes, a tomb for nearly all aboard. Nearby, the USS Oklahoma capsized after taking multiple torpedo hits, trapping hundreds of sailors inside. Men pounded on the hull from below, desperate for rescue as their ship rolled over. The scene was hellish black smoke, blinding fire, and the screams of the wounded echoing across the harbor. American gunners fought back as best they could. At Ford Island, crews scrambled to their anti-aircraft guns, some firing manually without orders or power. In the air, a handful of American pilots managed to take off amid the chaos. Lieutenants George Welch and Kenneth Taylor, flying Curtiss P-40 Warhawks, became the first U.S. airmen to engage the enemy, shooting down several Japanese planes in a desperate counterattack. The Japanese attack unfolded with chilling precision. The first wave targeted airfields and battleships. The second wave, launched an hour later, struck fuel depots and remaining warships. By the time the assault ended at 9:45 a.m., Pearl Harbor was in ruins. The toll was staggering. 2,403 Americans killed, 1,178 wounded, 188 aircraft destroyed, and 8 battleships damaged or sunk. The Arizona and Oklahoma were total losses. Yet, despite the devastation, the Japanese had failed to deliver a complete knockout blow. The U.S. Pacific Fleet's aircraft carriers, including the Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, were all at sea that morning, spared by pure chance. The fuel depots and repair yards also survived. Admiral Yamamoto, upon hearing the news of success, was not triumphant, he reportedly said. "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. He knew that Japan had won a battle, but perhaps lost the war." Back in Washington, D.C., word of the attack reached President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The next day, he addressed Congress with words that thundered through history. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. Within hours, the U.S. declared war on Japan. 3 days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. The global conflict that had begun in Europe now engulfed the entire world. For Japan, Pearl Harbor was meant to buy time 6 months to secure territory before the US could recover, but instead it galvanized an industrial and military response of unprecedented scale. American shipyards worked around the clock, producing aircraft carriers, bombers, and fighters faster than ever imagined. The sleeping giant was indeed awake and angry. In the months that followed, the tide began to turn. The Doolittle raid on Tokyo in April 1942 brought the first American bombs to Japanese soil, a symbolic strike that lifted morale. Then came Midway, where US carrier planes ambushed and sank for Japanese carriers, crippling Japan's naval power. The same aircraft carriers that escaped destruction at Pearl Harbor became the instruments of Japan's undoing. Yet, Pearl Harbor remained the wound that defined a generation. For many, it was not just a military disaster, it was a personal loss. Families received telegrams instead of letters. Empty chairs at dinner tables spoke louder than any speech. Today, the wreck of the USS Arizona still lies beneath the calm waters of Pearl Harbor. Its rusted hull leaks drops of oil. The tears of the Arizona survivors call them, rising to the surface like eternal reminders of that day. Above it stands a memorial where silence speaks for the fallen. Pearl Harbor was more than an air raid. It was the spark that ignited the fire of global resistance, the moment when isolation turned into unity, and when ordinary citizens became warriors. The world changed that morning, and history would never turn back. The flames of Pearl Harbor awakened a nation's fury. America would rise from the ashes, ready to take the fight across the ocean. Soon, bombers would dare the impossible, striking back at the heart of Japan. Join us in the next episode, Battle of Midway, the turning point in the Pacific. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.